Coogs House. Man, oh man, is it nice to be back in basketball season.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making it your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you want to join the conversation, what do you want to say? Tell us in the comments down below what your reaction was to the Stedlot steal and dunk. A little one-man fast break from the biggest fella on the team. Today's show is brought to you by Roy. More on that fun later. Just kidding. It's also brought to you by FanDuel, American number one sportsbook. All kinds of people bringing today's episode. We're going to talk about them later because I got a lot to break down from this game. I also want to look a little bit at the future, playing Auburn this weekend and kind of what that matchup looks like. And preview that a lot throughout the week, especially with being a bye week for the football schedule. We're going to focus a little bit on the basketball game. I want to talk about what stuck out to me in this game as far as new things and new stuff from old faces, because I think that's the fun part about starting a new season. But the most fun part of starting a new season is that the point guard fits. Milos Uzan fits like a glove with this team. Milos Uzan makes his first start officially with the Houston Cougars and jumps in and makes a big impact. Had 8 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds with 4 steals. Nearly a triple-double across the board there. And frankly, had he played a more traditional minute load, he probably does get that triple-double. I really don't know that the near triple-double, though, even really plays or describes how well he played, how well he fit into this system. Defensively, he really looked every bit the part of a guy who's been in the Houston Cougar program for a while. And obviously no one is Jamal. And we've talked for a while about how you're not going to replace Jamal with one guy. But from a point guard perspective, he looked like a Houston point guard. And I say that knowing that the previous 3 starting point guards for Kelvin Sampson all went pro. He looked really, really good. Used his size and length well defensively, threw his body around. And I mean that in the best way possible. Found open shooters, found open cutters, and really controlled the pace of the game in this one. It wasn't an extremely fast game, although Houston was able to play at a lot faster speed than Jackson State was. I don't think I've even said the score yet. Houston won 97-40. It was honestly never even really that close. But Houston was content playing like a 65 possession per team game. They really slowed it down and used their length and size on defense to kind of work things through. And then they might have attacked quickly on offense if they found a good shot, but ultimately kept looking for great shots, a couple nice drop-off for dunks and stuff like that. And Uzan, he controlled the pace that whole way, right? And so that's what I'm really impressed with. This kid just steps in. I mean, he's a point guard. He steps in right away and makes a big, big difference. Now, Milo's going to get a lot of shine throughout this because he was kind of the question mark coming in, and I think he silenced all of those questions throughout this game. Played just 26 minutes, pulls up officially just now, and I got to be frank, I thought it was going to be closer to 20. I didn't really think about that, but I thought it was going to be closer to 20. You got to think if he gets the normal 34 or whatever that a starting point guard gets, especially when the backup point guard is still kind of a question mark, that he's in the triple-double range. He was playing that kind of caliber basketball and really doing so without dominating scoring or hogging the ball to pass, whatever, just in the flow of the offense, playing that kind of well. I also want to talk as far as welcoming him in. I think we should probably mention that, while they're not new to the team, it was also welcoming back to JoJo Tugler and Terrence Arceneaux, both of whom I thought for stretches of this game looked like soon-to-be NBA player kind of guys. Now, JoJo Tugler positionally, I guess, is a little bit different, but he shot a 3 with no hesitation in this game, and then his pogo stick movement, the constant motor, the long arms, the throwing his body around again in the best way possible. All those kinds of things strike me as the kind of guy that ends up getting to play pro basketball. Terrence Arceneaux is just so smooth. And I know smooth is a cliche word for a long 2-guard 3 kind of basketball player. And there's probably a better word I'll come with over the course of the season because I don't think it's going away. But TA is just so silky smooth. Everything just feels very natural. He'll put on the ground for 2 dribbles and pull up in the mid range. And it just looks like a guy that's done it a billion times before that. He hit a 3 in the very first, I think his first possession was definitely his first shot. He'll defend 1 through 4, and he can defend a smaller 5. He's just a little outsized there. Really, really impressive showing for a guy that, again, it's been, 11 months, just under 11 months since he tore his Achilles tendon. Sky's the limit for Terrence, if that's the kind of guy we're going to get. That, because again, like we talked about football last weekend, this is the low end of what he's only going to continue to get back and get healthier with this thing, right? It's only going to get his legs back under him, get more trust in his body, and so on. Terrence is really good. I don't know that he starts for this team, and I think it's weird to talk about how he's probably a pro that comes off the bench, but that's just kind of the way the team's constructed and built. Really, Terrence is playing that kind of good basketball. And so when you combine those 3 guys as new faces in a way, because JoJo missed the last month-ish of the season last year, Terrence missed the bulk of the season last year, Milos wasn't here. All of those new faces made dramatic, big-time impacts in this game. And I think when talking about Houston, I've stressed that being the number 2 ranked preseason team in the Big 12 and number 4 ranked team in the country was actually being underrated because they returned so much starting talent from last year's team. They lost one guy, yes, it was the best player, I'd argue, in America, definitely awarded the best player in the Big 12 in Jamal Shed. Combining these kinds of guys to replace that, Milos, Terrence, JoJo, ultimately proves to be good enough. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Jackson State's the most difficult team they're going to play in the month of November, let alone this season, right? But on the whole, I do feel pretty confident that, and it's not just because 57 points is the second largest margin of victory Houston's had at home. I think I saw that stat tweeted out. It's not because Houston is now 94-6 in their first 100 games in the Fertitta Center. It's not because of any singular aspect. It just, the team gels. Team has played together, and the broadcasters are talking about in the play-by-play. They're playing like it's January, February basketball, and it's early November, and that's just because so many of these guys have played together in the system with this coaching staff. And I don't mean this head coach. I mean Quanis and Hollis and Kellen, the whole staff together. And it shows through in these kinds of moments, right? And I think that's what champions are built out of. I don't think it's facetious or short-sighted or getting ahead of myself either end of that spectrum to talk about this team can make a run at taking all the nets down in San Antonio. I think that they're that kind of good. Now, I want to talk some about a couple guys I saw that have new skills in their arsenal in the second segment. But before we wrap up this bit about new faces, fresh faces, refreshed faces, you got to give your hats off to Sampson on finding Milos. I don't know that Milos was necessarily the highest touted prospect in the transfer portal as a point guard. I don't know what people thought of him coming in. I got to be honest, we scouted Oklahoma to get ready for that game last year. He didn't stick out to me in that. Sampson saw something. He saw a true point guard. And on top of that, he saw something that he could work with and turn into a Cougar. And I'm telling you, in game 1, he looked as much like a Cougar as anyone else. It was really, really impressive. And so hats off to Sampson for that one. I see a couple comments in the chat. I also want to talk about some fresh skills for some returning faces. But before we get too far, I do want to talk to you about our buddies over at Roy, because right now this is an NIL group changing the game. So, Locked On Coogs fans need to understand that it's time to recognize our Roy Player of the Week. We're going to do this every week. So far this season, we've pulled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits leading to massive changes. The Roy app, you can directly support your athletes, football, basketball, men's, women's, any of it you love. To ensure all funds go to your specific players you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going. You can receive exclusive content along the way, like personal videos and updates throughout the season. And the best part is that it is risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver on the content, you get your money back. And so this week, after the football game, the upset win over the weekend, I'm choosing Hershey McLaurin as the MVP of the football game. He's getting $100 into his Roy account, but you can go donate to him, donate to Zion, anyone on the Cougs. You can pick someone from tonight's basketball game, the girls' team, whatever you want to do. Even $10 makes a difference. Go show your favorite Cougar the love to keep them connected to the school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support helps set the team up for success. Plus, you can that way you can get entered in the big giveaway. You win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code Locked On, and you're entered. If you're already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. Be sure to check them out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support players and change the game. Park Ranger, Locked On Cougs, talking about Houston's big opening night win over Jackson State, 97-40. Houston Cougars come out on top, number 4 ranked team in the country. I have to say that, we'll see how the top 25 shakes out. UCF knocking out A&M on opening night's funny. South Carolina getting knocked out by North Florida is funny. This is, Central Florida, I guess, that is representing the Big 12. I shouldn't get too upset about that one, but that's pretty good. That's pretty big time. We got a couple comments here before we jump into stuff I want to talk about in the second segment. We got here that Houston basketball is going to be fun this season. We'll have such a deep team. Hopefully no serious injuries this year. I think the depth should help with that. Like you saw tonight, Javier Francis is dealing with something in his groin. I don't think no one has said anything too major, but the team's got enough depth where, like, hey, they can play Jackson State without him and just don't use him, right? Depth should help with those kinds of things and kind of keep those smaller ones from growing. Other comment from the same commenters that assist game was legit tonight, and 3-point percentage is really high for U of H. 60% was 80% there for a while. Yeah, so I would say the drive and kick game worked well. That kind of works at both the assists and the 3-point percentage, getting easier shots. I heard one time, I think at technically the NBA level, but a kick out 3 is typically 12% higher percentage than the exact same on a swing or dribble up 3 from the same spot. And so driving and kicking for the great shot, I think, works out in that favor. Houston had 19 assists in this game. And frankly, I would argue there were times where they probably could have been credited with more on a fast break, but the guy takes 2 dribbles or whatever. And so ultimately, I think that it's a team that with this much depth, and again, they have to share the ball. There is no Jamal Shed to steer traffic all the time. Milos is pretty good at that stuff, but that's not his bag. This team's really good. This team's really, really, really good, folks. And I want to talk to the second segment some about guys that have added stuff to their game that I saw come out a little bit in this one. We said in the first segment that JoJo Tugler is knocking down threes. Apparently now we'll see how much that sticks. But one guy I'm looking for a big year out of is Emanuel Sharp. And I thought Emanuel Sharp looked explosive. And you got to remember, he came into Houston middle of senior of high school with a crazy bad leg injury. He spent that second half of what would have been a senior of high school as a technical redshirt his freshman kind of year, and then was getting healthy with the training staff. His freshman year, he was the first guard off the bench, and the Jarris Walker and Marcus Sasser year. And then the next year, he's a starter last year. And he really, not that he was only a sharpshooter, I thought he drove and used his body well last year. But it was all about strength And now he's added some explosiveness to his game. There was one move he made where he ball faked and drove, and I'm telling you, the first two steps on that were as quick as I've seen anyone in a Houston Cougar uniform move in a long time. And that's just for all the things he does well, not something that Emanuel has typically done well before. And it's credit to him and his hard work. It's credit to Alan Bishop and the stuff they're doing in the weight room. Credit to the training staff and getting him back again, catastrophic leg injury a couple years ago. Really just an impressive changing of his body to be able to do those kind of things because he's still strong. He can still do the contact. He went through and got clocked in the air one time and just bounced up like it was nothing. He's still shooting the ball like it's, I don't know, a ping pong ball in the ocean. I mean, he's got all that still, and now he's just added being an explosive athlete. I really think that'll help turn his game into the next corner. In this one, obviously they're beating the brakes off a team and then go too crazy. He finished with 7 points on 7 shots. Only got up 2 threes. I think that's kind of indicative of the kind of pace they were playing. It was more of a, getting everybody involved kind of a thing. But I think the explosiveness is going to pay off on his driving to the basket. He had a couple tough lays in there. And then also on the defense side of the ball. Other guys we saw add things to their game. I guess we could talk about Sedlot. And do you call that adding to his game? So if you missed the play, if you're watching a live, or if you looked away for a second, it was a blur. So I guess that's fair. Sed was involved in a trap. I think it was a Crier above 3-point line defensively. And the Jackson State kid turns it over. I don't even remember which kid it was. He turns it over. And Sed, in his bumbling, gigantic self, bends over and picks up the ball and realizes there's no one in front of him and has the most awkward 4-dribble fast break dunk that rocks the whole rim. It was phenomenal. Now, well, that play was maybe not something we can expect every night out of Sedlot. I do think the way he's continuing to grow as a basketball player is visible. He's just more comfortable with the ball in his hands, even if those dribbles were fairly awkward. He is reading the ball off the rim a lot better. Credit to Kellen, who works with the big guys on that one. Honestly, I'd probably also imagine some credit given to J1 as a senior leader on that one as well. But reading the ball off the rim is really important for a Division I level big guy. We think about the way your high school coach told you to box out, box out, box out. The truth is, when you start dealing with a bunch of guys that are 6'9", 6'10", and taller, that you're boxing out to make contacts, you know where they are, but when you turn around, you're reading the ball off the rim to go get it. Dennis Rodman would talk about how he would spend an hour in the gym watching guys shoot and not get a shot of himself, just watching how that rim is that tight, that way it's bouncing that way, and that kind of stuff. This is an actual skill, right? And so finding the ball off the rim is impressive, I thought, out of him. I also think that in watching guys and skills, Crier's really good. And LJ Crier is a preseason all Big 12 kind of guy. I think if Houston wins the conference again, he's probably player of the year in the conference. It'd be hard to imagine anyone else gets it besides the guy that's won, first team all Big 12 a couple years in a row and that kind of stuff. I think if Houston wins the conference, I think LJ Crier is probably player of the year in the conference. And Crier did lead the team in points with 16 in this one. I was surprised that he played as few minutes as he did to get those 16 points. He had 16 points in 19 minutes on 8 shots. When you factor in that he got the free throws for both the Jackson State technical and the Jackson State flagrant, that makes a little more sense. But on the whole, what I was trying to get to is, the backup point guard spot's kind of been dicey for a minute now. I'd argue it was dicey in 22-23. I'd argue it was dicey in 23-24. And ultimately, you could argue that injuries and slowing down the point guard with no real backup kind of hurt this team. Now, I think they're deep enough, like I said, to not have that problem necessarily. But LJ's getting more on the ball reps as a point guard orchestrating offense. And it's not just catching shoes, not just catching drives, not just catch and float. Right, he's doing a lot more organizing, setting up half court kind of stuff. And Houston's half court stuff is a lot more action based than motion offense based or anything like that. So I mean to say that he's orchestrating the Princeton offense or whatever, or anything complex. But I do think that him being able to do that and him focusing on doing that in games like this will pay dividends down the road for us, will pay dividends down the road for him, because at his size, he's just going to have to kind of grow into being a point guard. Even at an international level at 6'1", that shooting guard thing is really hard to do. And so if he can continue to grow into this point guard role as a backup behind Milos and work together on it, I think that does a long way for him. Now, obviously, I still want him to catch and shoot when he's open. And frankly, I think this team is better with him doing the catch and shoot stuff and Milos doing the drive and kick stuff. But just for the minute that Milos isn't in there, I think it's really, really impressive and important. Houston does play Auburn on Saturday, and what projects to be a much more challenging game. And I kind of want to talk about what I'm drawing from this one to take me into that one. But before we get too far into that, I do want to talk to you about our buddies over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The line for Houston Auburn's not out yet. It probably won't be out until Wednesday night when Auburn wraps up their game, maybe even Thursday morning. But whatever the case may be, whenever that's out there, you got to go to FanDuel, check out, and get in on the action. If you're looking for something in the meantime, get on the NFL action at FanDuel, America's #1 sports, because right now, if you put $5 down, you can get $150 in bonus bets if that bet hits. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com. You start with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Parker Ainsworth locked on Coogs here, breaking down Houston's big easy win, 97-40 over Jackson State to open up the basketball season. Houston looked every bit the part of their number 4 overall ranking in the AP poll, I should say. They're number 1 and more analytical kind of stuff and whatever. But as I look at this, Houston squares up with Auburn this weekend, and truthfully, that's going to be a much more challenging and daunting task. Now, Auburn in KenPom is number 3 in America. They're also at the AP top 25, coaches poll top 25. I mean, this team is good. Some people are saying, that this is like the best Auburn team that Coach Pearl has had there. They a couple years ago had a kid named Jabari Smith, who is on the Houston Rockets now, right? Like this is a program that's kind of turned itself around under Coach Pearl, and Coach Pearl is known for coaching tough-nosed kind of teams. This is kind of game that's going to feel like you're watching a slugfest at different parts of it, for sure. Now, I do think in watching this game, getting ready for Auburn, it's important to look at some of their roster and some of the things they got going on. They still have Johnny Broome, actually. I always want to do that. Johnny Broome was there when Houston played them in the second round of the 2023 March Madness tournament. Big guy, very, very active, gets after on the boards. Really, really impressive guy for sure. I imagine we still get Juwan Roberts on him. That said, I think if I remember correctly, and we're still getting ready for this game this week at Locked On Cougs, but I do recall feeling like Juwan Roberts was fine in that matchup 2 years ago. With that said, obviously, it's not like things stay the same always. The big incoming kid for them is a guard named Aiden Holloway, and this is the one that's been interesting, I think, to watch. He was like a top 20 recruit in the 2020, or different boards had him at different places in the class of 2023. Last year, he didn't. He was a rotational guy, 7 points, 3 assists, that kind of guy. He looks to have a much bigger role this year. He's listed at 6'1", so I could see him getting some LJ Cryer defensively. I could see him getting some Emanuel Sharp defensively. I could see him getting some Milos Uzan and using all the length on him, obviously. So we'll see where that goes. I'm really more interested to see what they do with the other guard, Katie Johnson. Sorry, Katie Johnson's the one that transferred out. If I'm trying to think of where I'm at on this team, um, I when I look at the team, I'm sorry, Janai Broom. I mentioned the other guard. I look at Chaney Johnson as the swingman. That was my guy here. Chaney Johnson, a swingman. He's a 6-6 kind of guy. So we'll see how he fits in to the program there. But he's kind of an interesting fit because I think naturally he would get the Emanuel Sharp matchup, but he's a lot bigger than Emanuel. And so I don't necessarily know where that leaves him for this year's group. And I'll be interested to see what kinds of things they're rolling out with on Wednesday night in their opening game. So they play Wednesday night in that opener. We're going to talk to Zach Blackerby of Locked on Auburn for Friday's show. So, with no football game this weekend, we're previewing a basketball game on Friday's show. And that'll be kind of a crossover feeling show to hear more about what Auburn basketball is like as well. Again, this team looks like it's going to be pretty strong. And so I think, frankly, Wednesday night, we might have a pretty good idea of what the matchup is like man to man and that kind of stuff. But honestly, if I look at Houston running out with like 8-9 deep, and we didn't even talk about Mercy Miller stepping in right away. And honestly, looking like a junior in college. I mean, he did not look like a freshman, certainly from a scoring perspective. Now, admittedly, Jackson State was not like pressuring him defensively in a way that would have shown the areas where he's more like a freshman. But 7 points on 6 shots, and he didn't play that many minutes. I don't know. He had an assist, a couple of rebounds. I think that the kid's going to be all right. The biggest thing that they can take from this one, though, I think that as they get ready for Auburn is assuming Javier is getting healthier by the day. This team walked out of this one fine. Emanuel Sharp got a elbow to the nose. He's going to be okay. And I think that as you get ready for Auburn on Saturday, you look at that as a key chance to actually really test yourself this week. And frankly, it's nice to get that test out of the way early. I'm joking on at the SEC at their entire conference's behalf in basketball on Twitter and stuff like that right now. And as silly as that feels at different points, because you got A&M falling to Central Florida and stuff like that or whatever. I do think it's worth pointing out that like Auburn's going to have a shot to win that conference. And that's, I think, probably speaks to the kind of team you're looking at this week. Now, I'm trying to think, is there a way to work in when I think about, okay, so I'm worried that they're not going to end up redshirting Mercy here, and they're going to wish they had, because he only played a few minutes. I thought Cordell Jefferson looked good in his time. You're kind of looking at the guard room like there aren't how many minutes go around in this guard room. And honestly, it sounds like a redshirt Chase McCarty. He was a top 80 recruit in the country, IMG Academy. We get that, right? That said, I don't know that Mercy's going to get a whole lot of burn, because while Jackson State didn't pressure him, the big holes in his game are defensively, and we know Sampson's not going to play a guy that doesn't play defensively. So we'll see how much burn he gets to Auburn next weekend. They have some smaller guards that he can match up with. Mercy's a pretty big freshman. But you could also see the kind of game where Cordell plays more, because Cordell's a defensive first guy. So that last guard spot on the bench is kind of up for grabs. As I look across the board here, I just get excited. I think there's so much going on with Houston Cougar basketball right now, and so many good things to be excited about, that on the whole, I'm ready to get the next one going. And I kind of honestly wish, I think like Baylor and Gonzaga like tip off soon and stuff like that. Like Jackson State's fun. Mo Williams as a coach over there's got the right kind of energy and all that. But I'm ready to get into some competitive games. So I'm looking forward to Saturday in Auburn. It's a late tip-off. I want to say it's like 8:30, but it's technically after Rice tips off. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But Locked on Cougs, be bringing it down each and every day here. Later in the day on Tuesday, get another episode of our book club, Dream. We'll talk with Mir and Fader about Dream as well. So make sure you check that one out. Big 12 squad later this week. Like I said, crossover with Zach of Locked on Auburn. So all kinds of fun things here. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we're live. Locked on Cougs, a prime member of the Locked on Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.